Hi there, Jeremy, founder of Chi Activation Healing here. In this video, what I'd like to do is two things. Firstly, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how and why I developed the Chi Activation Healing. And secondly, I want to discuss what it can do for you in particular, why I believe that even if you're already a seasoned energy worker, Chi Activation Healing will take your healing abilities and really expand them. Now, for those of you who have maybe studied with me or been watching my videos for some time, you might wonder why I've created my own healing system. After all, I've been teaching Reiki full-time for almost 15 years now, and I've been teaching Pellowah, the other modality I teach, for around about 10 years. So why a new modality? What can it possibly do? How can it add to those modalities that I already teach? Now, to explain this, I think it would be really useful to kind of go back to the origins of Chi Activation Healing. And in the process, we're actually going to go back to kind of my healing journey. And when we do that, you'll see how Chi Activation Healing developed and why it can really add to the healing modalities that I currently teach and quite probably the healing that you already do. Now, I've been doing meditation and healing for a little over 25 years. So it's a long time, and I started out with meditation. And at the time, I'd just finished high school, I'd started off at uni, and I have no real idea why I decided to meditate. None of my friends did it, no one I knew did it, and back then, it was a little bit weird. Like, you wouldn't necessarily tell everyone that you were meditating back then because it would be a little bit embarrassing. But nevertheless, there was something within me that said, go meditate. And so I started to practice daily. And it took a while, but eventually I started to feel some energy when I meditated. I learned to relax and calm the mind when I meditated. And basically, it just felt really good. The thing about meditation, though, and one of its limitations was that I couldn't easily share my experience with other people. I could tell my friends about it. I could say, hey, meditation, it's amazing. You have to try it. But they didn't really understand. At that time, a lot of my friends were very rational types. And so if I tried to explain meditation to them, they would say something like this. They'd be like, oh, so you sit on a mat and try not to think for an hour. That sounds really exciting. And all I wanted to do was to kind of take the feelings I had when I meditated, transplant them into them, and go, look, this is what you experience. But obviously, unless they did their own work with meditation, they were not going to experience those things. So it was a little bit frustrating. Then, however, some years after I started to meditate, I came into contact with Reiki. Now, the first contact with Reiki was what I call Western style Reiki, which really emphasized the hands-on healing, or the healing with the hands. And this was amazing. I mean, it connected me to chi, to energy in such a strong, kind of visceral way. And not only could I then give myself this energy, I could also share it with other people. And doing that would give them a taste of just how powerful energy work could be, and in many ways, how powerful meditation could be, because often the healing sessions took them into a deep place within themselves, into quite a meditative state. Now, my Reiki journey really is in two parts, because after learning what I call the Western style Reiki, some years later, I then learned the classical Japanese style Reiki, and this added a lot of depth to my Reiki. Before then, my Reiki was pretty well just the healing with the hands. After I learnt the classical Japanese Reiki, it introduced what in the classical Japanese system they call 5 diamonds, I call the 5 pillars. And these pillars really, a lot of them are to do with meditation. They're to do with making Reiki a spiritual path, a journey within, as opposed to just a more superficial kind of healing modality. And in the process, I learnt many things that I'd never learnt. For instance, I learnt to clear myself of deep energy blocks. I learnt to ground myself. Until that point, I'd never really connected very strongly to any of the energy centers below my solar plexus chakra. But working with the classical Japanese Reiki, I was able to go deeper and deeper. I could connect first to the hara, which is the energy center just below the navel. And from there, I learned to connect to all of my different chakras. So that was a really important part of my journey. The work with the hara also helped me kind of ground myself. So previous to that, I'd often get affected quite strongly by the energy of other people. But once I learned to ground myself, to kind of build up an energetic core from within, then I was much better able to integrate in everyday life. I could stay kind of connected on that meditation-like level within, but I could mingle with the world without getting myself kind of smacked off balance all the time. So it was a really big part of my journey. Now, after after teaching Reiki for a few years, then I was lucky enough to come into contact with Pellowah. Now, Pellowah is a less well-known healing modality, but it's beginning to grow and grow quite significantly even around the world now. And what's remarkable about Pellowah is that it's such a high vibrational energy frequency. So when you learn Pellowah, you learn to tap into this very high vibrational frequency, and you learn to work a lot with the auric field. Now, a lot of conditions, a lot of illnesses begin in the auric field, and it could be just emotional troubles, mental troubles, etc. They start off on a finer vibrational level in the auric field, and then bit by bit they kind of come down, and often they'll end up showing up in the physical body. And so with Pellowah, not only does it enable you to tap into really fine, high vibrational frequency, then it enables you to then work on the auric field and then do a lot of deep healing. And you find once you do Pellowah, what it did for me was it gave me a lot of clarity. It helped kind of connect me to my higher self. And as a result, I knew with much more certainty the path I should be on, what I should be doing. And I also kind of had the energy to follow through on those ideas. So it wasn't just an abstract notion, Jeremy should be doing X, Y, and Z, but then I sit on my couch and don't do anything. It was more like, I know what I should be doing. And suddenly, whatever blocks, those psychological, emotional blocks, which were stopping me from doing those things, now they're gone and I can do them. So that was a really big kind of further step in my spiritual kind of growth, my progress. But that said, there were a few limitations to Reiki and Pellowah. And one of them is that they really principally just work with one frequency each. And now this frequency can fix a range of issues, but they're not really trying to explore the full spectrum of healing frequencies that we can potentially tap into. They're going, you know what, let's pick one and do a brilliant job on it. Now, they're trying to be kind of absolute masters of one frequency. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a very good idea in many cases. Think of it a little bit maybe like if you're, well, for me, I think of it like chocolate mousse. And chocolate mousse for me is basically the perfect food. Now, if chocolate mousse were healthy, I could just eat it all day, every day, and pretty well only eat that. And I find that whenever I add anything to chocolate mousse, it kind of lowers the quality of the taste sensation. I mean, for me, chocolate mousse is perfect. So when I add to it, it kind of just falls. It's not as good anymore. And so just because Reiki and Pellowah really only specialize in one frequency each, at least in their basic form, both systems allow for extensions with symbols and other work that are included in it. But with the actual healing with the hands, fundamentally we're tuning into a frequency and working with that. So they do it really well, and both of those healing modalities are very successful in what they do. As I said, they specialize in a frequency and master it. So that's a good idea. But there's always a little part in me that wants to kind of continue to grow. It's like, yeah, that's great, and I've practiced that for years, but now I want to try more things. I want to taste more healing frequencies. And if I just stay in the Reiki Pellowah playground, then I can't really do that, and it's a little bit frustrating. Now, with Pellowah also has another slight disadvantage in that the actual healing with the hands component of Pellowah can't be done on yourself. And this always frustrated me a bit. Interestingly though, Pellowah, because it helps you to really develop your innate healing potential, it actually helped me develop chi activation healing, because since I couldn't do the healing Pellowah healing on myself, then I started to tap into source and bring in other healing frequencies that I could do on myself. And so having played around with those for many, many years, for about 9-10 years now some of those and some of those skills I acquired practicing there have come in, as I said, into chi activation healing. But in its pure form, you can't do Pellowah self-healing. So that was a limitation. Now, another limitation which both Reiki and Pellowah have, which has only really surfaced lately, is that neither of them allow for learning online. So for me, this is really frustrating because it's kind of inconsistent. Both Reiki and Pellowah teach distant healing. So they acknowledge that we can heal, over space. We don't need to be in the same room as someone. And yet, when it comes to actually teaching, suddenly, I don't know why, but those powers fail us and we cannot do the healing, we cannot do the teaching online, even though for many, many years, in Reiki's case, for basically a century, people have been doing distant healing. So that kind of frustrates me, but even so, I was going along, I was pretty well a law-abiding citizen, until recently, I was wanting to teach Reiki unofficially online. So I was kind of dividing up my course and going, look, we'll do one day online, we'll do one super big day in person, we'll get all the contact hours done in person, and we'll just have a bonus online. But the Reiki associations didn't like that. And they said to me that if I taught Reiki online in any form, even unofficially, even acknowledging that it was not accredited, they would then kick me out of the association. So then I had to kind of pull my head in and I'm like, well, that's a bit frustrating. What do I do? And suddenly it dawned on me, you know what? Why don't I start teaching some of the skills, some of the methods and techniques that I've been developing over all these years, and I can now start to teach them. And that was kind of when the idea for chi activation healing first came. And what was so nice about it is because I was building the system in a sense from the ground up, I could then daydream and I could ask myself, well, if I'm going to create a system based on, my 25 plus years of experience, what would be the key components I'd really like to see in it? And so I thought about it and I thought, well, first thing I'd like, not necessarily first thing, but one of the things I'd like is to make it a bit like Reiki and Pellowah, where when we channel energy, it's totally safe. So we never have to worry about getting slimed by anyone. We also never use our own energy because there are some healing systems where the practitioner uses their own energy, and even if they can do it very well and they can build up chi, then they give it to other people, and the other person feels great, but unfortunately their gain is kind of the healer's loss, and as a result, the healer can only give so much, and sometimes healers become sick because they give too much of themselves. So I wanted a system like Reiki and Pellowah where you were tapping into source. So it was an infinite supply. You didn't have to worry ever about draining yourself. So that was kind of like the first key thing. Secondly, I wanted a system that when you used it, again, like Reiki in particular, when you used it, you actually got energized. So the more you used it, rather than getting depleted, you actually found yourself getting more and more energy. So you could work with the system, say, for 8 hours, and instead of feeling really tired and drained at the end, you actually feel more alive, more energized. So that, for me, was a really important thing. Then, though, I wanted to really do something that systems like Reiki and Pellowah didn't do, and that was to totally expand the range of energy frequencies a practitioner could tap into. So it was like, you know what, instead of just having one frequency, what about if we could teach students to tap into a broad spectrum of frequencies, which would then be really useful for a much wider array of conditions, because you'll find when you're healing that certain healing frequencies are just much better at healing certain conditions. And so if you're limited to one, then it does to an extent limit the amount of things that you can really successfully deal with. But if we tapped into a broad range of healing energies, then that would really expand the range of things that we could work on successfully. So that was another key thing that I wanted to introduce. Then finally, I thought, you know what? I want a system that isn't really static, that really enables students to grow and continue growing. In fact, I wanted a system where inbuilt into it was the idea that students could take what they learned and continue to kind of evolve and grow it. So you never felt that you were plateauing. You never felt that you were kind of getting stuck in some rigid system. You were able to just keep moving up and up and up. And so that was kind of my dream idea. And it took me a while, but then I figured out how to do it. And so with chi activation healing, then the very first thing that I introduced was what I kind of call all-terrain healing. And I do that in level 1, by showing students how to tap into 5 different healing frequencies. And I choose a really broad range. And we start off, we've got Earth Chakra energy, which we learn to tap into. So it's really grounding. And at the other extreme, we've got Soul Star Chakra. And so we're actually using chakras now outside of the physical body. And that can really enable, as I said, us to get a huge, huge range of healing frequencies. Then we tap into the heart chakra, the third eye, and the crown. So they're the 5 that we tap into and tune into those frequencies in a course. And because of the range, as I said, you can now heal a huge variety of different conditions successfully. Now, after that, what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring into the system also key meditations, because for me, meditations were one of the things that really added a lot of depth to Reiki when I learnt the classical Japanese system. And they're in many ways kind of like the key to going deeply within ourselves. It's one thing just to kind of heal mechanically and let the energy flow through your hands. It's another thing to have that energy take you into a deeper state, to take you deeper within yourself every time you're doing healing. So I wanted not only the healing with the hands component of chi activation healing to be a meditation, I wanted to incorporate meditations within the system that help us connect more to our, what I might call our inner self, you might call your higher self. Also, meditations can do very precise things too in the healing world. And some of the things which are really important are, 1, clearing the energy channels in the body. So we've got energy channels and meridians. And so to have meditations which we can do to clear those will enable then energy to flow more freely through the body, which is great for healing. And it also enables a practitioner to then channel more energy when they're doing healing on themselves or other people. Another thing which is really important is for practitioners to also learn to be kind of in a safe space no matter where they move. So I talked about with Reiki how it taught me to ground. And so when I was more grounded, I'm a bit more like the mountain. And the mountain can stand there and the storm can bluster, but the mountain, it doesn't feel threatened. It feels quite safe no matter how much the storms kind of, rain can be lashing down, lightning can be striking, but the mountain feels content. In chi activation healing, I wanted to take another approach to it, and I wanted to show people how to really raise their energy vibration so that then they wouldn't get slimed by negative vibration. They could just tune into a higher state, and as a result, since like attracts like, they can kind of be immune from the negative stuff. It's a bit like on a really good day when you're feeling great about the world and someone says something and maybe it's not very nice, but you kind of shrug it off and you're like, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day. It's not a big issue for you. But on a bad day, when your vibe is lower, then you get pissed. Then it really upsets you, that comment. And so we're learning through meditation in chi activation level 1 to kind of go to that high vibrational place. And as a result, we don't get slimed by the lower vibrations. Okay, one more thing which I really wanted to add into the system, and I kind of borrowed this from Reiki and Pellowah, is the idea of attunements. Now, an attunement in Reiki and Pellowah is where the teacher tunes you in to certain, or attunes you to certain frequencies. In their case, the Reiki frequency and the Pellowah frequency. In my system, what I developed was activations, which fundamentally do the same thing. And the virtue of an attunement or an activation is that instead of having to work for potentially years and years and years to learn to really plug in to a specific frequency, you can just kind of borrow the teacher's experience. They know how to tune in. They can kind of connect you. They can attune you to that frequency. And straight away, without any effort, you can now tune in. So it's kind of like the fast path to healing with the hands. So instead of doing all the groundwork, all the legwork, you can get plugged in straight away, kind of matrix style. And so in the level 1 course of Chi Activation Healing, you have 5 activations, one for the Soul Star Chakra, one for the Earth Star, and then one for the Heart Chakra, the Third Eye, and the Crown Chakra. So immediately at the course, you can tune into all of those. Okay, so another thing, as I mentioned before in my kind of wish list for creating a course, was the idea that there's constant kind of growth. And so while I wanted level 1 in Chi Activation to really add something even to experienced healers, I also wanted to make sure that each level kind of built on the one before, and we continued to kind of evolve and grow to higher, more complex levels. So in level 2, what we do is we practice what I call vibrational balancing. And so in level 2, we kind of jump from the 5 key healing frequencies we learn to tap into to an infinite variety. So from there, we go from a few to infinite. And what we learn to do then is to balance conditions. So think of any issue or condition someone might have as being a little bit like a sound wave. So if you think of audio cancellation technology, sound cancellation technology, then you might see a sort of a graph or something where you've got a sound wave like this. Now to neutralize it, you'd do the inverse. And so one kind of counteracts the other. And so with healing, something similar can take place. You have a condition which vibrates at a certain frequency, and maybe that frequency is out of balance. So for instance, all the organs have a healthy range that they vibrate on. And if they go outside that range, then they become unhealthy. So what we can do then is we can pair this unhealthy range with another balancing range. And as a result, the organ can go back into balance. And so that's kind of the principle behind this vibrational frequency healing. And that's what we teach in level 2. Then when we move up to level 3, you've got 2 key components. And again, I modeled this a little bit on Reiki in that in level 3, we have a teaching component. So that's where you learn to teach Chi Activation Healing. But then there's also sort of much more advanced healing practices. And in level 3, we work mostly with the mind. So in level 1 and 2, we're working mostly with the healing component, with the hands. But in level 3, it's more with the mind, and we're learning meditations to heal others, a way to tune into energy. And we're learning to really gain a lot more sensitivity of energy flows within our own body and learning how to balance them and play with those. So that's a kind of an overview, in a sense, of the 3 levels in Chi Activation Healing. Beyond, of course, the course, to make it really effective, I have always found that you need to be thorough. And by that I mean, you don't really want a course just to be for the weekend. So obviously that will work well. You can have someone, they rock up, they come to the 2 days, they get a lot from it. But if you don't provide any structure around those 2 days, you find that it's a lot more common for students to kind of post-course to get caught up in the busyness of the world, and then they might ultimately stop their practice or not really practice as consistently, or even find that they just never quite mastered the techniques in the course. And so one thing I've always, well, at least I've done after the early years of teaching Reiki and Pellowah, is I've added kind of a post-course and a pre-course framework. So the pre-course, which I do through video portals, gives a student kind of meditations and things to practice so that when they arrive on the day of the course, they're not kind of starting cold. They're already warmed up, kind of attuning themselves to the energies of the course, and that enables them to get more from it when they actually arrive on the weekend. The second thing which I find important is I have a 21-day program after the course. So this is designed to give you things to practice in a very specific order. And it also is designed to kind of give you more information about what we're learning. So this will help you consolidate and then extend everything you do in the course. The other thing I always make sure I do is give students the opportunity to kind of ask any questions. Again, there's nothing more frustrating than if you do a course, you have a question, but it goes unanswered. So if you do a chi activation course, then the good thing is you can always write to me afterwards and at any point and ask me your questions to do with the practice, and then I or one of my team will get back to you with some replies, with some helpful ideas. Okay, so that then is an introduction to chi activation healing. Hopefully that resonates with you. If it does, I'd love to see you at a course. You'll find out there's a link down the bottom of this page. So if you want to go to the Chi Activation homepage, by all means do that. Read up more on the course, and I'd love to see you there if it resonates. So hope to see you there. If you've got any questions, just let me know.